So ZVT, right now you are playing a what appears to be just a Lingbane Hydra.
Yep, going to lurkers. I was trying Rainer's lurker style for a while, but I tend to delay the lurkers a lot because I forget.
Cool. And you kind of feel like you just defend all game long, right? And kind of
Yeah,
struggle
basically
with.
like I defend for the first 20 minutes, and only then do I start feeling like, okay, now I can actually start pressuring. And
Yeah.
like you can see, he gets like 6 bases, and it's like, okay, now this. Like, I feel like I should have been able to do something before this.
Yeah. Did feel like you were a little behind in this game. So one of the interesting things, right, is Hydra Lingbane, and part of the reason why I did it for a little while, but not too long. Thank you, Ryan. What's up, guys? Sorry. Um, It is very defensive. You can be aggressive with it, but it's always going to come off the back of you just having good macro and then bam, getting a big old army out. Now, I'm a big fan of people playing just Hydraling Bane on mass all game, right? Like just staying on it. Lurkers are pretty incredible, but you do have to be very active with them. And you know, if you cannot, like at this point being maxed on Ultraling Bane, Hydra Lurker Ling Bane, and not really doing anything with it. Like I can kind of see it's like, hey, where is the urgency? Because the fact that he gave you that period, there's like 2 minutes there, you could have been pushing. And if you get your lurkers sieged up, like they're gonna fuck shit up. Like look at this, he can't push in there. You only really need like 4 lurkers here. He can't fight it. So let's just like jot down a few little pointers. Like, well, if we do feel like going to lurkers, how can we win with lurkers better? And lurkers are one of the best harassment units in the game because yes, they're pretty high level, but they're the Zerg Liberator, right? So,
Yeah.
um, you can queue them into mineral lines. That's the best thing in the world. Now, I do you do much queuing up of run bys, like to do attacks ever in other matchups or anything like that?
I do with Zerglings a lot. I know I tend to pigeonhole only Zerglings, like, I should do roaches or something in CVP, but it's just natural habit to always do lings.
So in this matchup as well, another point is if they don't have, there's no tanks, right? You caught him on pure biomine, so you had like a
Mhm.
3 minute period here before he gets all these factories up. See how slow he is to build these? Look at that, man.
Yeah.
Dude, it's going to be minutes until he has any answer to the lurkers. So you absolutely should have killed him front on. So especially if they don't have many tanks, easiest win of your life, right? Easiest win of your life. Go, 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 attack, attack, right? That's the most simple way. But also,
Yeah.
in a more standard situation, Q, lurker, harass. So really simple. Let's ignore this army here. You would basically just grab a lurker. I forget, are you used to using the stealing hotkeys to remove units from hotkeys? From control
I
groups?
I've got the core set up for my hotkeys, so I always do steals.
Okay, so you could just use like 7 is a hotkey you're not using, or right now you're not using 4, right? So you could just like
Mhm.
click a lurker, put it on 4, and you could go shift, shift, burrow. Another one, shift, shift, burrow. So even if there's planetaries, it's going to burrow behind the mineral line, out of range of the planetary. It's going to run right along the edge of the map where it's very unlikely it runs through enemy forces to get there. And that is a huge problem. And you can often do this if you know they're on the map. You can even do it this way. Like if I was in your exact scenario right now, I'd do exactly what I just said, but I'd also go move there, there, with 2 lurkers. And then one of them would go there and burrow, and one would literally try to run into the back of the natural and burrow. As silly as that sounds, because
So just queue up and run a lurker into every single base, or try to anyway.
yeah, because it costs you nothing. It really, like a lurker, look at how much money you've got. Lurkers don't cost you anything. They're free. They're free at this point. It was getting the upgrades, getting the tech that cost you all the money. So the thing is, those lurker harassments at the very least are going to cost a lot of APM. They're going to have to pull SCVs away or they're going to take massive damage. Like those lurkers can kill so much stuff. The problem is they need to bring over enough units. Then they need to scan. It's not something they can just, like if there's like a few Zerglings, they can A-move a bunch of Marines and they don't need to look at it, right? But with a lurker, it's like they got to, okay, if they A-move a bunch of bio and then they're doing other things, they look back, they didn't scan straight away. It's like, oh shit, they just lost 20 Marines to a single lurker. It causes a lot of APM, a lot of trouble. It has massive damage potential. It can hit a planetary from out of range and start killing it. Often it'll hit SCVs, turrets, and planetary all in one shot. I mean, it's just an amazing harassment unit. So that if we are at the lurker stage and we are struggling because they're doing really good tank pushes or something, definitely lurker harass into mineral lines. And that's always along the edge, queued to burrow behind the mineral line. So you want to get really accurate with your clicks. So you're obviously not going to click that. Like if I was doing that, I would click a. So I guess let's just fast forward to get rid of all the exclamation marks. So say you're sending that lurker. I might select the lurker, steal it. I would actually click my screen here first because that's the target.
Mm-hmm.
I would right click on the minimap because that doesn't need to be exact. Right click on the minimap doesn't need to be exact. But here I need to be pretty exact, right? I can't just go
Yeah.
burrow on top of the planetary or something like here. So I've already moved my screen. I can go, okay, right there, back behind the mineral line. Awesome. And you might be playing like a player who leaves a tank at every base. And you're like, yeah, it doesn't work anymore. Awesome. You just forced this fucker to leave a tank at every base. Like this is great. These are huge moves, and very rarely will people have a tank at each base. So lurker harass is massive. The other thing is, if you were to go attack, like how would you go attack? Well, the thing is, you got to have that urgency. In general, with Hydraling Bane, I feel if you're max, you got a good economy, you should be trading. So let's like look at this point where I really love when you went and killed this base on the left. You were way behind in this early mid game, right through the mid game. Look, like you can see you were down on workers. Only now do you get up a good economy, and then you immediately get across the map and you kill a command center. Like that's fucking awesome, man. So that was really good. You had a bit of urgency there. Like, all right, I got a good army. Let's fucking do something with it. We don't have an overseer with our army, which is definitely a bummer because you are playing against Biomine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, did he? Oh. Oh, okay. Your opponent just forgot his upgrades for a while. That's all right. All right. You're playing Hydra Bane. So, biggest thing. You're not actually playing Hydra Bane. Nice confusing way of saying that, just to make it stick in your head. You've got.
I'm playing the comp, but I'm not playing it well.
No, you've just got a lot of Hydras. Like I know you're building 12 lurkers now, but you had 30 Hydras and no Zerglings. So the danger with that is if they get like a bunch of tanks or whatever, which is good versus Hydra, is like what you've got nothing to take tank shots. You got nothing to surround their army. Everything's a bit slower and stuff. And the thing is, you don't have any range upgrades. So if you've got 30 Hydras, that's 60 army supply. Say they get to +2 or +3 armor. Your Hydras are losing 2 or 3 damage a shot. They're not the worst unit, but they're definitely not the greatest. And you can have your +0 Hydras in a line fighting 3/3 Marauders, and you're very quickly going to realize when medevac sealing those Marauders, like, Marauders aren't the greatest units versus Hydras, but then you're like, oh, they're not fucking dying, man. So in general, we do want to be a little careful with our Hydra count. I would say 30 is like the upper limit of where you want to go with it. I like to think of it normally with this style, like Lingbane Hydra, of like maybe 10, at most 12 Hydras in each army. Because any more than that gets kind of stuck behind each other and so on. So if you're going to play heavier Hydras like you do here, I would actually probably swap after +1 melee into range upgrades.
Okay.
Or we just go a bit lighter on the Hydras to a point where we're like, okay, 12 Hydras. Okay, I'm at 150 supply plus. I'm getting close to max. I'm going to get to the point where I probably split my army in 2. All right, I'll build another 12 Hydras. So like 20 to 22, 24 max Hydras as opposed to the 30 max Hydras. Just a little bit of an adjustment there in terms of Hydra count. Do you think you'd play it like that, where it's still mostly Ling Bane, bit of Hydra support, and then the lurkers come out? Or do you want to keep playing a bit heavier on the Hydras? Do you really enjoy this heavier Hydra count and maybe just go into the upgrades for them a little earlier?
I think I've mostly been going into the heavier Hydra count because they're just more larva efficient. And I've been struggling with that a little bit.
Right.
It's
Okay.
when doing so many lings, like you can see this game, I don't have any macro hatches. Normally I put down 1 or 2 to actually have enough larva to support lings. But this game in particular, I was just like, I just need more larva efficient units to actually spend all my money.
Okay, cool. So in terms of that, I mean, I guess now's a good point to go back. We've already looked at like, I think, because up to that point where those lurkers sat at home, I think we've already pointed out where you could have like won this game, right? Getting active with those lurkers, getting pushing. So let's
Yeah,
look
that's
at,
the other thing
yeah.
is like normally I try to not be aggressive with lurkers until they've got their speed upgrade. Should I be prioritizing that over their range upgrade then?
I prefer range. Just get over there. Even without the range upgrade, I mean, you can't be running on top of a giant army and burrowing right on top of it the way you sometimes can with speed. I mean, we've all seen Raynor do that to great effect and also disastrous effect, depending on the situation. He just comes in with a shit ton of lings and lurkers and tries to burrow on top of them. But yeah, it's just gonna be yeah. Like I guess if we look at that later point, let's check it out. Check it out. Okay, so Hive finishes. How quick are we to start building lurkers themselves and the upgrades? Let's take a look. We're busy here, getting harassed a little bit. We don't have much map control at all, which is a scary thing. At this point, we really should have our army into even pre-morphing lurkers. I would say just have that army split into one on the left, one on the right. And if they're not pushing you, if you can shove one of those sides down, if you're like, I don't want to push down on the left, or maybe you do, just so if you can at least like be on the edge of creep and you see him and like you can kind of like force him to siege up and spread back and just you know you're not going to commit, but you can just kind of slow down his push, right? That sort of thing. But then the other army could just be like, oh cool, we kill a base. Oh, roll some Banes into the thing, because you're such a good defensive army. But if you all get stuck behind each other, they don't really do anything except give value to the enemy splash damage. And you also make it hard to defend drops and stuff. So you're setting yourself up for problems with multi-prong, lib, harass, drops by keeping your army in a blob. And don't worry, you're in good company. There's a couple of Zergs I've been very critical of, like Solar, who do this every game. And I shout at them while I'm casting them. Because I'm like, you should be the best EVT player right now, but you don't split your army up ever. And you keep headbutting into where the Terran wants to fight. Stop it. And if there's another Zerg I was giving shit for this later. Obviously, they're amazing godlike players, and it's such a fast pace of Zerg versus Terran. I'm kind of being hypercritical there, but it's something we all struggle with. But I tell you, if you can make your default system when you get above like 150 supply or so, army split in two, one on either side, dude, that's just like it's such a game changer, man. So I really want that to become your default. Where what would it be, like 1 and 3?
I believe that's what I think. 1 and 3 or 1 and 2 I did. I don't remember the actual numbering of the control groups because the core. So for me, it's O and L or O and I.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Well, just whichever. So which two of those would you have? Like, because you're gonna keep a key free for lurkers, I guess maybe. But,
Yeah. So generally, I as lurkers. That's generally my tech group. So L is the drop defense or backstab group, which I guess would be the second army group, and then O is the primary.
okay.
Is how I've just got it set up.
Cool.
But yeah,
Yes. So
later in
you
this
can just
game,
use
I think
those,
I'd
right?
do that.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, if you can do that before they start dropping and pushing you, dude, like I tell you, this is a game changer. I've been doing this a lot more in my ZVT with my Lingbane Infestor style, and there's so many times just because I'm split like that, I go to deal with a drop, and then he pushes down the other side, and he runs into my army and has to siege straight away. And there's just less of those times where they're in range of a base and you're not ready to fight. There's less of those times where I'm like, oh man, I wish I could run by right now. Fuck, let's start splitting my army. Instead, it's like, no, that army is already in the middle of the map on the other side. One army defends, one army goes and fucks their economy savagely. You know, like it's incredible having your army pre-split, but having a max of mid-tier units as a Zerg all on one control group, unless you are out hunting for a surround or something with it, it's like, fuck off. 2 control groups, it's such a game changer because it's the pre-setup for the sandwich. Oh, I do want to fight them front on? Cool. The other side just comes in from behind on their push, and you've automatically got a sandwich. It's just amazing. And Lingbane Hydra especially, think of the best Serral fights you've ever seen. It was always him getting a surround with his Lingbane Hydra. It's when the Marines have nowhere to run to against the Banelings that, bam, it's so good. 2 groups by default. 1 on either side of map. Often it's 1 aggressive, 1 defensive. 2 pieces of bread is the other way we can think of it. And we want their army to be the peanut butter or whatever the hell we want to, the salami, I don't know. Depends what type of sandwich you like.
Well, what's your sandwich? It's the ice cream.
Yeah.
Ice cream banana
turn their
cornflakes.
army into the melting ice cream, Nutella peanut butter, absolute just disgusting. Take your time filming a video so it melts and is terrible. Oh, big thank you, by the way, Uzi and Bernardo. Thank you for the subs, guys. Really appreciate it. Okay, cool. So I think that's good because we've given you some more pointers there and stuff. I can't remember how we got into that. I know I was going to talk about the early game a little bit more. Should we look at the later stages more now and continue with this, or go to the early game? What do you want to look at?
So like from this point on, I feel like I've actually got decent control of this game, and so this is where I start feeling able to be aggressive because I actually have an army that I know can take his. So this is probably less educational now. The early game's probably more helpful for me
Awesome.
because
And
from
that's where
here
you were
it's like
struggling.
just tech switching, and then I can just push down both sides, and eventually I starved him out basically.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Does the UI show control groups? I don't know if the default one does. I think it does. But in GameHeart or WCS, you got to go Control Shift G. So I don't know if you bring that up, by the way, TackerX. What overlay do you use right now in this replay? Are you just
Uh,
in WCS
y-
or
no, I'm on Game Hard as well.
you're in GameHeart? So you use Control Shift G, yeah, to bring up the control groups whenever you say you click on one of your buildings right now, you should be able to, or one of your units, as long as, or you go to your camera view, either way, you should be able to see that you've got 2 hatcheries on control group 6. Does that show up for you?
Um, no, Control Shift G
Yep.
does nothing for me.
Because you're using the core. So for me, I always swap to standard hotkeys when I'm looking at a replay. You'll always see me do that on stream.
Ah,
I could go through and methodically remap everything for the core, but I cannot be bothered, and I don't even know where to find all the replay settings. Even though I do technically know like the hotkeys for some of the tabs in the core, all the fancy stuff, work is lost, Control R, that sort of stuff, Alt Shift, Control, yeah, Sorry, what did I
yeah,
say?
like
Control Shift G. Is that
like
what I
I
said?
know like
Yeah.
units lost is Shift L for me, and I've used that every once in a while, and then Control Shift O to bring up the timer so I can scroll through. But
Yeah.
those are the main ones I use.
You always got a tab up, right? In that top left. You're always swapping between units and
Yep,
production tab.
units production. Yep,
Good.
units and production are the main two.
I've been doing a lot of first person coaching lately and picking up on a lot of people where I'm like, all right, now you steer the replay, and there's not a lot of people who are microing that tab enough. I'm like, oh, I can tell there's
Yeah,
no muscle memory there, which means they're not watching enough replays, or when they are, they're not actually looking at the production tab and the unit tab, which is the more useful information. Yeah, Control Shift G to bring up the hotkeys, which is nice. Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about the opening stage. So, what's the biggest thing I always talk about in early game? That's Overlord positioning. So, first of all, let's go right back to the start. How did our first Overlord die?
I sacked him, I believe, for scouting around 3:30.
Okay. Doesn't usually get a very effective sack from that angle, from the natural.
Yeah,
So, I would either always bring it to there if we're planning to sack every game, because you want to go through the middle of the production. That's the main point where the add-on swap. Or I would just leave it on the pillar at the natural. Or if we're leaving it on the pillar, we still want to scout, I'd bring a second one in, because this sacrifice is, as we see here, not very useful.
yeah,
Doesn't see
but
anything.
it showed me that he's probably going what is it 2-1-1 because he's got so many Marines.
Yep, that is true. But you could also see that because no Hellions have come out at all. And if you sent a Zergling in, same sort of thing. So
Sure.
it's just, you did see it this time, but what if he chose to just send 2 Marines down? You wouldn't really know in time, right? If there's just 2 Marines there, maybe you see the barracks in the reactor, maybe not. It's it's very dicey. So definitely something I'd say don't, hey, don't bother with that one. Do it from the high ground every game, or leave it on the natural and just go without the scout. I love Overlord sacrifice. I really think either bring in the second Overlord for the sacrifice is really good. What do you want to do? Because we need to have a pattern that we stick to.
Yeah, I've tried both. I tend to like keeping the second Overlord home to have better vision around for Hellions for queen positioning. So I'd
That
probably
shouldn't be relevant actually too much, I don't think, because you didn't put your Overlord. Oh no, 1, 2. Where's your third Overlord go? Let me see.
he's heading over to the left of my third. He's just slow.
No, you forgot to do it this
No,
game. Yeah.
drat.
Also,
All right.
that's going to be an issue where it takes so long to get over there that it's really late, right? Because that's the furthest to get to, and it's
Hmm.
usually going to pop from your main or natural. So a little tip is if you can shuffle your overlords over, that does help, but it's a bit APM intensive, right? Saying this overlord moves there, that overlord moves there, and then your overlord replaces the first one. So Yeah, I guess we could probably just send the Overlord over. Okay, I'm okay with that. So what do you reckon? Just put the Overlord here and sacrifice it as standard? Like check the command centers there and then queue it just to go back to the sacrifice spot and then go in 330?
Yeah, that sounds. I think this game I sent it in a little earlier because there wasn't a command center building on the natural like I'm used to.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent it in, but it obviously died because he built this natural in his main and floated it down.
Yeah, that was a bit of a weird one. But yeah, I think it's a good habit by default when we send the Overlord across. Just say go to where it'll see the command center, then pull back to that spot, and we can go in a little later. And that way, it's something you queue up at the start of the game so we don't forget. Because obviously, if it gets to like 3 minutes and you're stuck on the pillar, you can't really get around at that point without dying. And then 330 sack. All right, no worries. Okay, cool. So your early two bases droned up right on time, like nice and quick. We did get a third queen out as well. We've got a fourth queen actually starting really early, which I'm a little critical of. So this fourth queen is one of the big things which I'm kind of critical of. So your fourth queen is super fast. Now, why is that super fast? Well, like why do I mean why is that too early? Notice that you are very starved for minerals at this early stage. You always are as a Zerg player.
Hmm.
So what we want to kind of realize here is we want to be droning nonstop as hard as we can. But then we also want to have like lots of queen production once we saturate the two bases, which should be about 340, something like that, right? So normally it's like just three queens until two base saturated, about 340, then three queens at a time. Because you are doing like a rule of one gas here by the looks of it, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So that fourth queen, it's not the biggest deal, and if you still get it, honestly, it's not the end of the world. But those two lava could have been built a bit earlier. Um, Normally, I would use an inject after the first creep tumor as well here. But you
Use the
actually,
same queen to inject.
I would,
Cause
yeah, but it's not that different. It's like what is that? 8 seconds. It's like about eight
yeah,
seconds. About 12 seconds. 12 seconds of inject time. I don't think it matters too much. It's a real small optimization. We do have lava sitting there after though, so we're not quite spending all that lava. Okay, now we are. Now we are. Now we're spending it. So yeah, like I said, you droned up pretty quick anyway, so it's not too bad by any means. So I think you could keep it the exact same order and we'd be fine. You're already used to this. You seem pretty tight at it. I don't see a need to change it for like the tiniest optimization. That earlier fourth queen is not a bad thing. It's like I said, it's like, it could be three extra drones starting slightly earlier, right? It could be you spending that lava slightly faster, but you've put back on gas at time. You're in a really good position from here. This is where you start more queens as well. You start two more queens. Like, this is pretty awesome. We do need one more drone on the natural, and we do need to be droning that third base with a little bit of urgency. So this is where... Okay, cool. This is the pivot point. This is where you don't feel completely comfortable droning your third, and that's the big problem players have with this build, because the whole build is that's what we need to be able to do. And the way
yeah.
you're playing here against the dude who's aggro with Hellions is perfect. So this is the thing. Super aggro Hellions rallying across. Let's make sure we, in our mind, think of that as a different branch, like a completely different scenario, right? Different situations. So one, super aggro Hellions rallying across. Two, really passive Hellions, or 2-1-1, right? Now, in this case, it's the second branch. What does that mean? Drone the shit out of your third ASAP, right? You don't need to be getting 16 lings out and 10 queens first. Like in this game, right? If we realized 2-1-1, which we're about to realize, we actually should realize we don't need these extra lings right now, right? We can just put a ling outside his base in case he walks across the map with these marines with some wild attack. But we need to drone that third as quickly as possible. And we even could have delayed these queens and been like, oh, you know what? I'll build the drones, then the queens. I'll like flip that order to be super greedy. Like you could get away with it, right? Like you'll often see me try to squeeze about like 5 workers out on the third super fast. Like if they're not in my face with those aliens, I'm just like, get the drones over. That's a
Okay.
highly adaptable, advanced thing. It's also, well, how are you going to defend it? You've only got one queen down here. So let's just talk a little bit about securing that third. Securing the third.
Yeah, so I've just sort of made a default for myself that after my main and nat are saturated, make at least one round of lings just for defensive, just because so many people do the Hellion run bys, I just use them for that before I make any drones. Should I just be droning anyway instead of making that round of lings?
It's all about identifying the scenario you're in. Your default is safe. Therefore, it's good. I like the safe thing as the default, right? So you're going 2, 3 more queens, all start up, and then a round of Zerglings, and then you're droning your third. That's super safe. That's awesome. So make that your default, right? So that's your standard. But in a scenario where you go, wait a second, I haven't seen a single Hellion, and maybe you can make it a habit of doing something like, well, I always send a Ling in at like 3 minutes 30 as Ling speed finishes, or this Overlord goes in a little bit earlier. Oh, this guy doesn't even have the factory on the reactor. You know, and then maybe we could have already been into droning if we see this a little bit earlier, right? Because we've identified this is either there's 2 Hellions, but they're really passive, I feel totally fine, or it's just a handful of Marines building up, so we don't need to worry for another minute and a half until anything's going to come to our side of the map.
Okay. Need to put this fork in my head.
It's all in the document. I'm writing it down, so
Okay.
go take a look at the document. I forget, do you have 2 monitors?
I do, but I've got Alt Tab and you've moved to a different page, so I wasn't seeing you typing.
No worries, mate. Just on the second page there. Yeah, we've just gotten a bit lower, moving our way down. So really passive 2-on-1, but also in standard, no matter what, before we know which style it is from them, bring queens down. What do I mean by that? Oh, look at all these queens. You built a 4th queen. You took forever to move it down to the base. But not just that. If you're building queen at each hatchery, you can inject, and then bring these queens down. So you've just done inject. Uh-oh. Macro cycle deviation. Your Overlord distracted you. You're doing... So what you just did, you just went inject, creep tumor, inject, look at Overlord, forget about macro, build a Baneling nest. This is what happens here. Uh-oh. Macro cycle deviation. Even the creep tumor in there kind of triggers me. I get it. You saw a queen. You're like, yeah, let's do that. But even then I'm like, we want to like, the macro cycle should be this holy thing that just happens a little bit. So the thing is, right, we should have been like, okay, there's extra queens building that are automatically going to replace our injecting queens. It should be inject, do your macro cycle, and then grab those queens, throw them into your defense key out front, and get them out front your base. So you can very early on, as you're doing that, quote unquote, greedy droning of the third, even if it's just a handful of drones to start, you can already have 3 or 4 queens down there. And that means every time the Hellions try to poke forward, you've got Overlords out, you've got creep out, and your queens are just attack moving. Oh, you see the Hellions are driving up here? You see where I'm signaling?
I'm having to look at the stream now for that. I'm not following your camera.
Oh, it's not. You can't see it in the... If you're not on your own camera, if you're on everyone's camera in the replay, you should be able to see it in real time.
Oh, okay. I was on my camera. That's why.
So say you see Hellions coming here, you just move those 3 queens to that angle, keep droning, keep doing, start building your Zergs. And these little things, it's just... What you'll notice is often the Hellions don't dive until 440, 445. But a lot of Zergs, could drone their third quite a bit, then build the Zerglings and still be safe. And a lot of the time, we're playing someone who doesn't even have the threat of the Hellions, but we're playing as if we're in that mode. Now, this is not the worst thing in the world. You're playing extra safe here, but we're identifying where we can get bonus points. If we get better at our scouting, we always send that Overlord in right at 3:30, and 20 seconds earlier, bam, 3:45 or something, we're like, oh, wait a second. First thing we see is barracks on the reactor. Oh, this is not even a Hellion build. Oh, awesome. You're already rallying to your third and like droning to it. You've clicked these last eggs you've built onto your naturals, so those drones are going to finish saturating. You're like, rally to the third, hold down the drone key. Keep building queens, keep spreading creep, because we're preparing for a 2-1-1, but we don't need any extra Zerglings until the last minute, right? Until about 4:30 onwards when we can build them. Laterlings. Yeah, so I think that's really cool is bring the queens down and let the new popping queens replace them. that can be really huge. So getting into that habit of just moving them down there a little bit earlier will be really nice. I don't think you mess this up massively by any means. I just think that we should understand that we're playing on the side of safety. Most of the time, this is going to be perfect. In this scenario where it's a 2-on-1, it's just a little overly safe. So seeing that, we see the optimization, we become aware of it. Maybe not every game, but games where we're on point with our scouting, we can make the adjustment. We can understand the situation we're in. And right here at this point, we should not be panicking and building a baneling nest and spreading creep. We should be spending the 9 lava we have, sticking to that macro cycle, right?
Now I spent them.
On the wrong units as well, right?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Wait, why are we building Zerglings? It's not going to hit us for a minute. So it should always be drone the third base and then build the Zerglings. And if you want banelings, you can do it as well. But personally, not a big fan of banelings against the 2-on-1. I think it's not bad to have them, for a second wave. Like if they bring a third medevac or something, definitely it can be nice. But yeah, spores, banelings, all these things, we're putting ourselves way behind here. We're doing all the things we don't need. You never need spores against a 2-on-1. They're, like I said, if they're dropping a lot in the follow-up after you defend the first wave, yeah, you can maybe drop a spore on your edge bases, But you'd drop it right on the edge, wouldn't you? To stop them from flying in on the edge. It's not needed to be in the middle of the mineral line. There's no need for that, right? This doesn't really serve a function in this scenario at all.
Yeah, they're just sort of extra safety for what?
Yeah. So let's go real deep on 2-on-1 because we put ourselves way behind here unnecessarily. He's not even hitting a particularly fast timing, and that's more common these days with the 2-on-1. People are doing these macro 2-on-1s. Look how quick his third CC is. Old 2-on-1 wouldn't even think of building a command center for like another minute. Wouldn't even start it, right? I'm talking like literally a minute 40 later. But he's like doing a macro. Look how quick his eBays are. This is a light 2-on-1 pressure, which has already done double the damage it was meant to because we reacted poorly. So this is powerful. This identifies where we fell behind massively in this game. So let's talk a bit about 2-on-1. You've seen 2-on-1. Let's go back. This is where you need to do a little bit of visualize, memorizing. Let's look at the document as afterwards. I'll write all this down so you can look at it there, but let's visualize right now. This is the point in the game where you're about to identify what the hell's going on. This is it. All right, we're taking control from now. What do you do?
So I see. It's been drone up third, basically.
Drone up third base. And then? So you're going to focus on drones first. What next?
Moving all my the queens, having them just be replaced by producing queens and get my queens that are currently inject queens to the front lines for better defense.
Not really important against marine drop because it's not going to hit for a minute and a half. So it's actually probably more important for you to not miss injects in this scenario. Definitely you'd bring them down. That's more to defend the early Hellions poking around. So definitely you need to bring them down. But in this scenario, say you're like, oh, if I pull this queen, there's going to be 10 seconds before like this inject finishes and before the next queen pops and the next inject starts. Maybe I'll just leave this here, let it inject and then bring it down or whatever, or bring the new queen that pops out down. So definitely we would bring queens to the front. But so basically you're going to drone up your third base. But I'm just saying like, okay, so you're doing your normal things. You're just droning, you're building queens. Like what else are you doing? There's a 2-on-1. What time does that hit in your head?
Roughly 5:30.
Cool. So do you need to do anything to defend it? When do you build Zerglings is what I'm getting at.
Probably about 5 minutes I need to get Zerglings. I also need to get Link Spotters out.
What if they hit right on 5:20 and you've just started building Lings at 5 minutes and you're also slightly supply blocked? It's cutting it a little close.
Yeah.
So realistically, if we drone really well, only takes us one full cycle of drones here to mostly drone the third. If we want to be really safe, 4:30 is the timing in my head. We can make it, let's say 4:45. Let's put it there for now. And you can see if you want to be like, let's make it 4:30. Let's make it 4:50. Maybe you can get away with 5 minutes because you've already got your overlords. 4:45 Ling production. And of course, we need to make a little note. Extra overlords, right? A lot of people, when they swap to unit production, they just forget about overlord. Like, build a big round of legs. Awesome. And that's it. And then they just supply blocked.
That's me. That's me.
Yeah, that's a ton of us. They normally leave their base about 4:40. It's like could be 5 minutes. In this game, it's probably 5 minutes. That's where Lings attacking their natural is often huge. So if you can have, you know, early Lings waiting plus spotting, waiting to hit their natural. I don't even necessarily put Ling spotters out that much. What I would do you know what I would do though? I'd pull back my overlords, dude. Because your overlords are good for spotting Hellions and stuff, but in this case, there's going to be Stim Marines running around real early. So I'd pull those 3 overlords back. I'd keep overlords out in the dead space, but I'd actually pull back those front ones just because they're free kills. So I'd pull those back to safety. But early Lings waiting to hit their natural, let's just say 5 minutes. You just A move. So say you leave your 6 Lings in the third, then you say at 5 minutes, I just attack move the natural. And that sees if he's moved out or not. If you micro, oh, he's still there, you pull back with it. Sometimes his medevacs are just leaving. He turns around and unloads his medevacs. So you can buy yourself a lot of time with that, but you can also, oh, his medevacs are across. He didn't build his next Marines very well, and they do big damage. They maybe kill a few depots building. They kill a bunch of SCVs. So let's look at, if you did that in this game, 5 minutes, you click them in. Check it. He hasn't quite left his base yet. It's a little too early, right?
Yeah.
But if you did it like, say, 5:20 now, check it. Those 3 Marines are even walking across the map, but like there's nothing at home. 6 Lings running into his natural. It's going to kill 10, 12 SCVs. It's like a game winner. How silly is that? But that's the meta advantage of understanding our opponent's builds. So let's say hitting at 5 minutes, you might change that to 5:15 maybe. You find the timing that works for you. There's going to be a point where you're like, most of the time this hits in my games versus my opponents. Bam. And yeah, that changes for me depending on my opponents a lot as well. You know, I'll play a really, really sick future level player and I'll be like, oh God, I gotta get in there real early. He leaves his base so fucking fast. And then I'll play another guy and I'm like, he still hasn't left. What the hell's he doing, man? He's just a little slower variation. But that's powerful because this third mineral line could have been saturated the whole time. And yeah, you could have then built your Zerglings from 4:30 and then just continue to do everything else you want to do, you know, keep droning,
I guess a question,
evos, etc. Yeah.
Is that same 5-minute window good for the Hellion versions if they're aggressive Hellions?
Well, I would have my Zerglings defending in that scenario. Can you send Lings in to backstab the Hellions? Sure, absolutely. But that means there's less Lings defending at home behind your queens. So it's like if you do that, if you do any sort of Ling run by, you're gonna have to yeah, potentially, you know, have a few extra Zerglings to make up for it. What I'd often do is just try to, like, if people build their command center in the wall in the current meta, yeah, I'll just like attack with like 3 Zerglings or something. Like when I know the Hellions are deep on my side of the map, just as like, oh, if we can kill the SCV building the command center, it's really annoying, but it's not really a powerful move just because you don't know with a Hellion player. There's so much more variance. Like a 2-on-1, 2 medevacs, 16 Marine stim. This is locked in. They have to go do this push. There's no real options there. With a Hellion build, you don't know if this Psycho is just going to keep building Hellions. There's like no break ever. You don't know if he's always leaving 2 at home. You don't know exactly when he's going to move out and push you. So the whole idea there of a Ling backstab is, you know, minutes ahead from seeing the Marines that they're going to be leaving with everything they have at a certain point in the game. Their wall-off's probably not going to be up, or if it is, it's only just now being built, which means, you know, the SCVs are exposed. They might have 1 or 2 Marines popping out of a barracks behind their wall, nothing else. So that is a very specific thing for a 2-1-1. So don't be thinking of that in any other scenario. And that's all written here in the document. So look at that list and make sure that's a different track you're on. That's a very different track. That's specifically, oh, I've spotted the 2-1-1.
Yeah, okay. I guess I'm looking for something to do against turtling mech players as well. Because I see a decent amount of those as well.
Yep, yeah, very different scenario, very different scenario. So let's try and get onto that when we can. In terms of this game, I think you did all right. You were kind of forced to play on a bit of a lower work account. You took a long time to drone your 4th and so on because you were a bit behind. You made a load of Banes.
Yeah, that was too many Banes.
Yeah, well, you had to split your Lings to deal with the drops, so fair enough. Yeah, you're playing in a bit of an awkward position. Definitely, if you found the time to drone up some more dudes, because like, wait, what is it? Your main natural third are all a little under saturation, I guess, and your fourth takes a while to get droned. But once it does, hey, you know, you're doing all right. This guy's multi-dropping quite a bit, and you took a long time to split into two squads. So yeah, these Marines over on the left doing tons of damage, right? If he stemmed those
Yeah.
in the mineral line, he could have killed so much. And he actually, does he get the hatch?
I believe he. Oh,
No, not
oh, I
quite.
guess not.
Yeah, so he kind of like just didn't focus and he killed an extractor and stuff at so many hit points. But yeah, so that's just like, hey, wait a second. The moment a Terran shows you a drop, which he did earlier, he already multi-pronged in this game, you know what sort of Terran you're up against. So this
Yeah,
moment here, hard to deal with. Understandable. You had your whole army together. You were respecting him. Actually, wait, what is this attack? Oh God, what is that?
that was me setting up something, and then it was a bad idea.
Yeah, you had no
Uh,
units at home. That's so dangerous.
that
Oh.
it's me wanting to be finding an aggressive window and not finding it there.
Yeah, you've got to have a real pre-planned logic to your aggressive timings. That's a 0-0 Ling Bane timing that spent all the gas that should have been on Carapace. You took heaps of damage earlier and were already behind. So that was like a half-baked let's be aggressive, you know? This is
Mhm.
let's plan you some aggression. Let's plan you some aggression. And we can do some big Ling Bane aggression for sure. We can do some big stuff. We could even do something pre-Hydra. But that's got to be defined. Like if we want to give you, I'll write out like a little plan here. Aggressive plan, aggressive Ling Bane run by. So the way you're going to do that is you need 66 drones first. 66 drones first, Bane speed, and 1-1 on the way. And the idea there is going to be as soon as we feel safe, split, let's say 40 Lings to set up to hit their natural and morph 12 Banes. So the idea there would be like, look, you would not have done that crazy attack. That was just silly and stuff.
Mhm.
But you would just be finishing your droning, making sure your upgrades there. You're ticking all your boxes, right? And then you would always go from here into the natural. Because that is a much more powerful angle than hitting the third base where they can just grab the SCVs and run to the natural if they react quick enough, and where their army tends to be sitting. And you would also wait for them to be attacking you or moving out, then send it in. Bust wall and split units into both third and natural mineral line at the same time. So the idea there is, say at a moment like this, maybe it's a little hard to defend because you've got so many units on the other side of the map, but because you've just been massing units off 66 drones, it's like, okay, you've got enough to not die at home. You might take a bad trade or lose a few drones in the main because you're not split. But imagine if you had, 30 Zerglings and 12 Banes come in right now, hit this natural, split into the natural mineral line, into the third mineral line, same time. Like, you're going to annihilate a lot of workers. It's going to be a big win for you.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's that kind of window that I'm trying to find, and as you can see, I failed miserably in my attempt.
Yeah. It's got to be more of like a set thing. Like, I do that every game right now because I don't like sitting back either. And I think a lot of Terrans are macroing really hard and they're macroing really greedily. And it's really empowering to just have a set point where I'm like, nope, grab a whole bunch of Ling Bane, send it across. And sometimes they do such a hard push, I don't realize they're committing to a really hard Marine tank push, one of these like really committed 3-base ones. And I'm like, I have to give up my 4th base and I lose it. And I'm like, well, that's not great. But then I'm like, wait, I killed all the naturals, the workers on their natural and third, and I just moved my workers over to my 4th. So I'm still on 3 full bases mining. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fucking winning this game really hard. Like this is incredible. This is awesome. And suddenly they're the ones who are forced to push deep on creep and get annihilated. So I think what's really powerful there is, have an actual planned out attack that you go for. The worst thing you can do is just run your units across with a random attack like that, because now where's your carapace? Now where's you finishing droning your bases and the rest? And where's you adapting to your opponent? It's not there. Now you're on the back foot so much. So what you had in that last minute was a chance to get in control of the game, get more drones, more units, and then crush a minute or two from then. But you threw it away by doing the half-baked counterattack. So realize that after doing a good little early defense, finish hitting those goals, go for the pre-planned attack. Like, this is a great opportunity for you to get in control of this game. we spent a bit more time macroing right now and didn't just send all our lings across the map. This would be like where we just finish our 66 drones, double ups, bam, bam, bam. And then ignore this whole fight that happens. You're going to see, oh, he's pushing the left and dropping the main. It's hard to deal with the first time. You got to react, blah, blah, blah. But once you've dealt with that, you know what sort of Terran you're fighting. From that moment onwards, I would always have at least like, say, 20 Zerglings on a separate control group. And if my main army's fighting on the left, they're up in the main. If my main army's fighting down on the right, they're hanging up here at my third, right? Always on the most exposed flank, ready to defend a drop. Because this guy, he showed that he likes to do that, and he keeps doing it all game, right? It's always these drops keep splitting off. For the rest of this game, he never stops.
Yeah, and it's pulled me apart a lot of games.
It's cool as well, because that can kind of turn into the split army as well, right? That we talked about before. So it's almost like you're getting even more practice at just splitting into 2 army groups by default, even though it's just a little squad early on. So I really like that.
Yeah, I tend to have that, but I focus too much on having it be an aggressive rather than a defensive group.
Let it be defensive, absorb a few things, then turn it into aggressive. Try to think of it that way, where it's like after you've defended some shit and you've got like heaps of control, then it can become this amazing, amazing counter-aggressive force. Like I really love that flow where you like hammer a few drops in a row and your opponent kind of like pauses on it, like, oh, this isn't working. And then you just move it across the map and it blows up a planetary or something, you know? It's like, oh, this is awesome. So, okay, so we've got a little bit of a plan there and stuff. Don't throw your units away on silly counterattacks. We've got one big pre-planned one that's kind of pre-Hydra even, right? Making a lot of Ling Bane. And hopefully, you know, we're defending with Ling Bane and doing that, and then going into like the Hydras and the droning the 4th base after that, right? So that's kind of, okay, we've got a stage there. So then it's drone 4th base and make Hydras after that and do your normal stuff. Awesome. That's really cool. That gives us a moment where we're overbuilding units. We're not rushing to drone our 4th. And then we're looking to use those units to assert control, force reactions out of our opponent, blah, 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 blah. The things that make it less easy for them to just be attack, 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 queue things in, don't give a fuck about anything. That's going to be a game changer for you, man. We already talked about he could be way, way ahead in this game as well. Just off that early game, right? With the 2-1-1 response, which will be game changing in scenarios like this. Like you'll just have so much more stuff. And that 1-1 Ling Bane counterattack, 1-1 doesn't have to be finished, by the way. It doesn't really matter. But the idea is, you know, they're pressuring you with their army. Those units run in and smash the natural wall and get in both mineral lines. Like that's such a big, big game winner. I think from there, you look pretty good with the lurkers. We talked about all that stuff. Are there any other questions with this sort of game, or should we go look at a mech replay?
I wish I had a mech replay that I could show. The only ones I've got are from a peep mode I was playing with friends, so I don't know if we can watch that replay.
Do they not work as replay? I mean, maybe we could just zoom through that peep mode.
We can try it, sure.
Let's give it a go, man.
Yeah.
Well, what's your plan at the moment against mech? You just playing Hydra Ling Bane as well, or?
So that's kind of the issue. Is I try to swap between. I don't know which one to pick all the time.
So what do you swap to, like Roach Hydra Viper or something?
Yeah, so I try to go to Roach Hydra with Vipers later down the line if it's a more traditional mech, I guess. And then if it's more battle mech, I try to do more Banes.
Yeah.
Okay, which one is this? I'm trying to remember which one I had the games in.
I like what Belia says in chat. Very experienced Zerg plays says never kill a Terran. Killing a Terran is a suicide move. You starve them, you poll them, just don't fully commit. This is how you know, that's it. This is how you give them a super good engagement, is when you ball up and headbutt in. Just make me the host, and yeah, we can just 8 times this. Cute Asian girls in here? Garrett?
Yeah.
Fucking Garrett? Oh my god, all the cool kids are in here. I love it.
Yeah, so it's actually against Kathy. She's the one who mech killed me a few times.
Oh, is cute Asian girl Kathy? Oh, I always forget that's her account. I always give her shit for that, right? Yeah.
Okay, well, my replay is completely borked out. Like the hatchery doesn't actually exist on my monitor.
All right, come watch the stream. It's all good
Okay.
on mine. It's all good on mine. Overlay is a bit dirt, but that's okay. 10-minute warning on the alarm. No worries. Thank you, phone. We're onto a mech replay. Anything other than the mech that we want to cover as we're getting towards the end?
I guess the last thing would be any ideas about something like a proxy racks. I struggle against that too. Like
Do you
proxy
sit
2
you
racks,
sit your
proxy 3
overlord
racks.
outside your base, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so I see it, and it's basically once the two bunkers start going down, I try to pull drones to zone off the Marines and maybe kill the SCV's building. But I always end up losing too many drones to actually
Yeah. Well, you know what?
recover.
It's a little different depending on different scenarios. First things first, do you control group your drones?
Yes.
Good. So what I would do is the first drones I would pull, I'd put on one controller. And as soon as I see a Marine and an SCV coming, I'm like, oh, okay. I put like 8 workers. So I would actually use 2 control groups. Use 2 different groups. Why? Just so that I can already. So basically, first I go with 8 drones initially, and already hotkey the next 8. Let's say 8 and 8. Sometimes I do it in 3 waves a lot of the time if I haven't practiced against a lot lately, so I died to 3 racks yesterday because I hadn't practiced against it. Oh, sorry, this is Chandras playing? Oh, no, this is you playing. Yeah, sorry, I was just on
Yeah,
camera.
actually, just remembered this is not the mech game. This is she went a 2-base Hellbat Cyclone all in.
No worries. We'll keep this one just 8 times until we get to it. Obviously, it's a very long replay, so we just speed through. So 8 drones initially, and already hotkey the next 8. Annihilate everything. So the thing is, basically, actually, no, I'll give you the technical wording. Most of the time, just fucking overwhelm and annihilate everything. So closer, more aggressive build, especially if it's like 3, that's especially if it's 3 racks. Basically annihilate everything. Overpool workers and commit to kill SCVs and bunkers, plus surround early Marines. But the thing is that there's always an ebb and flow. It's the same as defending a 12 pool, right? If you pull your drones to defend your hatch first, there's a
Yeah.
good fight. You got 14 drones you pulled, there's 6 lings, you gotta fuck that shit up. 7th and 8th ling arrives. If you got a good angle, maybe. 9th and 10th Zergling arrives, you better get the fuck out of there. You can't fight that anymore. Oh, now your 4 Zerglings have popped out. Oh, you can fight that again if you got a good angle. Oh, he's got 2 more lings, and my drones have already been a bit bruised. Oh, now my queen's out. Now I can fuck him up. Same thing with the Marines, right? Except obviously it's a bit more. If you commit into a bunch of Marines, it's a little bit more brutal, right? Things are gonna get you really friggin' bad. So it's about understanding when to fight and when not to fight. So there's a lot of look at it and go, oh, you know what? I was chasing him with these drones. I killed 2 Marines, and then I chased another 2 screens without Zerglings, and I fought 6 Marines with 14 drones. And turns out I lost every drone. Who fucking knew, right? In hindsight, there is an ebb and flow. So there's commit, fight, pull back, fight, pull back, fight. Now that's going to vary based on the situation a little bit, right? That is going to vary a little bit based on the situation. But that is the main thing, right? So I'm a big fan of annihilate everything, overpull workers, and just get on the barracks immediately. If they're close enough to you, that's an awesome way of doing it. You're like, I'm just going to pull every worker and just friggin' go. All I'm going to build behind this is Zerglings. I'm not going to have any extra minerals for a spine or a queen. But you know what? These barracks are too close, or consistently, I think I can just surround their units because they're not quick enough at microing, and we can surround them. I think mineral walking is obviously really big. So figuring out, like, on, if we're on this map, you watching the stream?
I am.
So
But this isn't me playing right now, so
I know. We're just using the map as an example. Say the barracks are over here and they're running back this way. It's like, oh, cool. Or they start running north. Okay, we should know on this map. Marines are running back this way, out of here and there. We know to mineral walk up here, and we're just going to drill straight through them. And if they're really good, they'll run off to the side to get out of that surround. But basically, just knowing which mineral patches on which map you can use to, like, surround in a certain direction can be really nice. And super hardcore people will even sometimes camera hotkey those locations. Mineral walk, I don't do that ever. I just click on the minimap because it's too variable. We don't get enough reps against it. But yeah, I would say that's the cliff notes of the 3 rack stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've got one of those replays, which maybe it'll 2 minutes. We can just look at that real fast instead of scrubbing through this.
Do you remember where the game was in this? Because I think the mech stuff's actually honestly more useful. I honestly think because
I,
every situation's a little different. Those
mhm,
notes are what you need. What you need to do with the 2x is just a 3x. Spend more time just looking at the replays each time, because you should be able to identify this was a good fight at this moment, this was a bad fight at this moment, and you just need to build your visual and mental catalog of what's good
mhm.
and what's bad, and get that rhythm down of when to fight and when to pull back. As long as you get that rhythm down, you'll do really well. So
Yeah.
every time you lose a game, even when it's very frustrating, trust me, you look back on it, you'll be like, oh, I fucked up.
Yeah.
Like
I think
it's
this
actually
one might be it. This is Kathy and I again.
yeah.
It's either this one or it was on my other Pete mode replay. We did 2 Pete modes.
So yeah, basically yeah. So as long as you analyze some replays of your proxy rexes, you'll get better at it. It just takes practice. And what's the solution? Get Kathy or whoever. I mean, there's only one, her or Lyric or someone else, whoever, any Terran friend to just proxy rex you 5 times in a row. That's honestly it. It's just about building the repetitions, the muscle memory, and the visual bank to recognize what the hell's going on. And just
Yes.
each time look at the replay and just become aware of, oh, this is where I made the mistake. As long as you've got that patience rather than the gut reaction of fuck this guy, this is bullshit, you get so much better against those cheeses so quickly, dude.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. This game, I remember now. I tried going swarm hosts for the first time ever, so it didn't go well. So I tried a new build this time, and it didn't
Right.
do much for me.
Yeah.
I'm
Well, you
also
did.
getting killed by harass.
Yeah, you didn't have any defense at home. You sent every ling across the map, and you made burrow. So
Yeah, I was trying new
half baked,
things.
half baked things. I mean, that's a cool move. You just know you need extra zerglings. If you're gonna do that, you got to have an extra 20 lings at home, and you got to think about it a little bit more, right? You got to have it planned out a little bit more. That's it. So there's nothing wrong with trying new things. There is with only trying it once, half baked idea, and then bam, right? You got to put a bit more effort into it. So we got annihilated by that this game, and we didn't have creep between our bases. Our queen count's a little light, which is really bad against BCs. So this is just a mess of an opening. But in terms of
Yeah.
how you want to play, I mean, I think it's just important, like, to go over this theory really quickly. So we can lock this on your camera in this game and just see how that goes. So in terms of verse mech theory, it's almost Hydraling Bane works versus everything. Slow build up, right? So until you get Bane speed, until you get your Hydra upgrades, until you get a decent clump of Hydras together, it's just very vulnerable to, like, the first few battle cruises. It's a bit hard to deal. Like, Hydras aren't going to help. You got to defend those with Queens, right? Blue Flame Hellions running in. Hard to deal with. Once you get all the upgrades, it works versus everything. Just a bit of a slow build up, a little bit more fragile. Okay? Roach Hydra Viper, most solid, works versus everything. If we get Vipers fast enough. Really good for practicing your micro. Roach Swarm Host only works versus traditional mech. Okay? So, do you know what I mean by traditional mech?
It's generally the Hellbat, siege tanks, and then eventually Thors, right?
Yes. That's
That's what I
essentially,
think
yeah.
of as
No,
traditional mech.
absolutely. That is it. That is it. So there's like a weird mix, right? Like this game, it's like there's some Blue Flame run-bys, pretty traditional, but there's a few battle cruisers in this game with Yamato. So pure battle mech is like more than a few. It's like a few battle cruisers. It's Cyclone Hellion battle cruiser usually, right? So BC. The thing is, if you go Roach Swarm Host against BCs, right? It's like, well, could you have done it this game? Yes, but you probably needed Corruptors to deal with the BCs, right?
Yeah, no, this game was a bit of a train wreck because I was just trying something new to see how it would work because it was a friendly game,
Yeah.
not a ladder game.
I mean, ignore this game. Don't even look at this. So look back at the document. Let's really get in the theory
Okay.
mental space right now. Because if you're playing Roach Swarm Host, it's amazing, but you would need to add Corruptors. Now, the problem you get into there is if you're up against Battle Mech as well, you'd need Ravagerling Bane to deal with the Battle Mech. And that's all going to be based on surrounding their army, right? Basically, versus Battle Mech, you'd need Corruptor, lots of supply. and Banes. So it's hard to actually have Banes and surrounds as well. You also need to surround their army. So it's just very hard. If you end up on that, like, where do you get the supply for your swarm host? If you're playing Ravager, Bane, Corruptor, it's hard to get the swarm host out. But that being said, wait, isn't that a style of its own that works versus anything? Ravager, Ling Bane, Corruptor? Yeah, it does. It's a lot about just busting bases when they get exposed. There's a real art form to the movement with that. That style is all about movement. It's all about run bys, picking things off with bile, and busting bases whenever they aren't heavily defended, right? Because you can just roll in so smoothly, and Banes are so supply efficient. The real trick for you is to, you can also do Hydra Ling Bane Swarm Host. Hydra Ling Bane Swarm Host. Same as above, but disgustingly cost inefficient and unbeatable. If you play like Rogue. Just play like Rogue. That's my favorite style because I feel untouchable. When I play Hydra Ling Bane Swarm Host, if I get up to it, I'm like, you can't beat me. And I do occasionally lose a game if they're just good enough at just shoving through. And there's like libs queuing on bases nonstop. And they're just pushing through me and pushing through me and pushing through me. Because with that style, I do need to, if they're pushing hard enough, I need to actually lower my work account because 16 Swarm Hosts chews up 48 supply. So what you actually need to macro really hard and take your engagements really methodically because you need to keep refilling your Banelings instantly because that's your units that stop their pushes because they clear the Hellbats, allow your Hydras and Locusts to kill everything else. And then you add like Vipers on top of that as well as like the bonus sickest unit. People always ask, why didn't you add Vipers early? Because there's so much APM and skill to using Hydra, Lingbane, Swarmhost correctly. Vipers are like the bonus card for very specific situations. Parasitic Bomb versus mass air units. And Blinding Cloud or Abduct versus Mass Tank, usually just Blinding Cloud. But those are a lot of styles. We could play 1,000 ways. Some people like to have one style versus Battle Mech, one style versus regular mech. Some people like to try and do a one-size-fits-all, like Hydra Lingbane or Ravager Lingbane. For you, it's what do you feel like being good at? What excites you? Are you excited to kick ass with Vipers and just yoink, 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 rush the fuck out of Vipers every game? Are you excited to play Ravager Lingbane every game?
I guess like I've been always trying to go for lurkers in the end, and it seems to be the same between Protoss and Terran. So this game in particular was me first trying Swarm Host just to try a new unit because I've never tried them before. So I'm kind of interested in giving a Swarm Host style a try, especially against mech, because I want to learn how to use the unit better, and I think it's a more efficient style where I don't feel like I'm just constantly bashing my head.
Yeah, free
Like,
units is great. I mean, dude, if you just want to play Roach Swarm Host, just go Roach Swarm Host. If they go BCs, get Corruptors if as you need them, but try not to overbuild the Corruptors. And add Banelings if they go lots of like Hellions and Cyclones and stuff, just so you have a bit more of a mobile army to deal with it. But try to just do Roach Swarm Host. The real trick is going to be micro. Okay. So just make sure you micro each Locust wave. Sometimes you get too busy, you can't. But what do you do to micro Locust wave? You launch Locusts, what do you do immediately?
so right now I just launched them at the general direction. I'm guessing I'm supposed to right click a specific unit I want to kill. Maybe it's a tank, maybe it's a command center or whatever.
Nope.
But
So
it feels
first throw them. So first, that's awesome. This is great. You're at ground zero, dude. Trust me. When you open up the world of a good Locust wave versus a bad Locust wave, amazing. You're gonna feel so good as you get better at this. Control click the Locusts immediately on launch, and give them a move command. Move command past the targets. Why? Because otherwise they're just gonna land on anything. Okay.
okay.
So you got to do that, and then you box sections and land plus left click. Swoop, whatever the swoop key is. Swoop plus left click on key targets. So, I mean, we can just look at this game, pause. Okay, let's say we're throwing a Locust wave. Oh, this is a bit too late in the game, I think. Let's go earlier. Got really messy by that point. Okay, cool. Let's say, fuck, this game's weird. Hold on a sec.
Yeah, peep mode is weird.
Yeah, or just in general, she doesn't have that many units. But okay, cool. It's not that many great examples. She's a little slow on her Hellbat production. That's cool. Let's just say we're throwing Locusts on this base. Yeah, you throw Locusts. If you don't micro them, so you're back on the stream, yeah?
Yep.
Throw them from here. If we don't, they're just going to land on the depots, get shot at, and be like, oh, no, and start butting against the depots, and maybe some landed on the other side. They're going to do nothing. Instead, we launch, we control click, we click them into the base. They're just moving over, and we're like, ooh, and we box like some locusts. We go swoop right there. You want to click them right on those two tanks. So they land right on top of them. They bring enemy tank splash onto them, and they kill them. Other ones, you'd be like swoop on them, and then you'd maybe swoop some more. You'd be like swoop in the mineral line, and then you'd hold position in the mineral line as well. Hold position to kill SCVs rather than aggroing towards shit they won't reach. Target tanks and Thors. Avoid Hellbats and Hellions like the plague. You land on a bunch of blue flame Hellbats, you won't get a single shot off. They'll just all burn up instantly. So that's it. That's the trick. If you see a planetary without much defense, you can fly all your locusts over and then swoop on it and just target it and just kill it. And they can't even mass repair it in time, which is really cool. Yeah, that's the cliff notes of Swarm Hosts. Get practice, get replays of it though. We are over time.
Yeah.
But I think we covered a shitload of stuff. Holy crap, dude. We got notes for days, man. What the hell?
Yeah, this is gonna be a while for me to get through.
It's all really valuable stuff. I hope it is for you. I think it is, because I feel like we covered so many different areas of Zerg vs Terran there.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to. I feel like I'm going to be mixing up what I'm looking at for different builds. Like, can I pause my Terran game for a second while I figure out which build I need to go to based on what you're doing right now?
Well, try to keep it really clear and simple in your head, because remember, like, most of that ZVT stuff, like I said, like, your build was good, you were playing safe. If you see a 2-1-1, you have a specific trigger response, right? That sends you down a little bit of a different branch for a little bit. That's a little, moving your queens down a bit earlier and stuff. Okay, maybe that can change as standard, but every game, no matter what, you're going to have that Ling Bane attack you're trying to set up on the natural at some point off 66 drones, right? Where you're trying to send that across on your different control group, get your Banelings ready, and then as they're attacking you somewhere else, send it in to bust their natural wall and that big counter attack. That's going to be something you look for every Zerg vs Terran playing Ling Bane. It's going to be a game changer, man. But yeah, there's a bit of a deviation, a branch, and then back to the normal build for 2-1-1. There's minor adjustments you can maybe add in versus a player who's like lightly aggressive with Hellions, but not heavy aggressive with Hellions. That's way down the track. That's not important. That's like the highest. That's like real fine tuning. That's not something that's like, oh, I got to focus on that today. No, fucking, we don't care about that, right? Me saying, oh, you could drone the third slightly faster before building those lings and get them 20 seconds. That doesn't fucking matter, man. But the big one is, oh, it's mech. Bam. I'm doing my Roach Swarm Host style. This is a different build. And start mapping out the details of that. Oh, you know what? I always die to a big blue flame attack. I got to remember to get 10 roaches out before going Swarm Hosts. Like, maybe that becomes a rule, right? Find what's going wrong in your games and just start working out rules. And just make sure you really think of these as completely different tracks. And here's my verse mech set of notes that I add to over time. Here's my verse bio notes that I add to over time. Here's my 2-1-1 branch off those bio notes. That's its own little section. So, the more you can just formalize that into like its own little separate flowcharts, its own little trees or whatever, or its own little set of notes, it's just going to become more natural with time. But, we talked about 1,000 things today. So practice one thing at a time. Read it when it's fresh tomorrow. Read it when your brain's a bit more awake. And read it again. Read through the notes again in a week when you've actually had a time to put some stuff into practice, because you'll have forgotten some things by that point as you start to make it your own.
Yeah, I need to find a Terran buddy to mech me a few times, I think.
Anyone in chat around Diamond 1, Diamond 2, anywhere in that rough range wants to do, hop in a chat channel, Piggy, right now, Piggy. You can also speak in Twitch chat, I think. Are you there? You're in Twitch chat, Takarix, right?
Yeah, I've got your stream open.
All right, you guys can tag Takarix there as well if anyone is about there. Say hey. And dude, yeah, thanks for the sesh. I'll catch you later, my brother.
Yep. Thanks. I actually can't right now, but later tonight probably.
Yeah, just add contact now if anyone's there. Be like, oi, let me cheese you later. Awesome, man. Well, good night, and I'll catch you next time, brother.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.
Laters, man.